Welcome back to another edition of the Disney Dish podcast with Jim Hill. It's me, Len Testa, and this is our show for the week of Schmurz Day, October 19th, 2020. Happy birthday, Laurel. On the show today, news, and in our main segment, we talk to Smithsonian museum specialist Bethanee Bemis about Disney theme parks and the American experience. Let's get started by bringing in the man who wants Oompa Loompas to come out every month and sing us a song about what we should have learned so far in 2020. It's Mr. Jim Hill. Jim, how's it going?
Well, it's interesting you bring this up because
you were thinking about it, were you?
Our national Oompa Loompa, Josh Gad, he was on Twitter, I want to say like a month ago, where he was trying to get people to register to vote. He set thresholds. For example, he got 1,500 people to register to vote. He would do the recap of the end of Avengers Endgame as Olaf from Frozen. And if he got 3,000 people, he'd then have Olaf do a recap of 2020. And he got over 3,000. And so I won't give too much of it away, but he starts off, it's like, oh, I love geography. Let's see what's going on in Australia. And it's like, oh, it's on fire. Okay, let's not talk about that. All right, but I love to explore. Let's go to the other side of the globe. Oh, what is this place? Wuhan, China. Oh, I love to learn about other places. And it's absolutely wonderful. So forget about the Oompa Loompas. We need Josh Gad every month to give us an update of 2020.
Suddenly it doesn't feel so bad.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
All right, see, it really is what they tell parents when dealing with kids. Like, it's all in your tone of voice. It really is all in your tone.
Speaking of which, parents, hi, Ava.
All right, Jim, let's do a shout out to subscribers over at disneydish.bandcamp.com. Jim, we've got a ton of new in-park audio for our Bandcamp subscribers, and I will be recording even more this weekend. So, folks, let us know if there's anything specific you want to hear. And thanks to new subscribers Will T, Rosie G, and T-Dog Troy S, and longtime subscribers L Disney H, Jason H33, and Nicole B. Jim, these folks are updating Epcot's Holiday Storyteller acts for today's in-park experiences. So this year you'll hear new stories like Père Noël gets a flu shot in France, and KidCot activities like knit your own Hanukkah face mask. Sponsored by Ziploc. True story, Jim. True story.
This would explain the rumors I've been hearing about Project Cool, the old Coke station, which is being replaced by a giant hand sanitizer bottle.
They just walk under and get doused by alcohol.
There we go. It all makes sense now.
All right, folks, let's do the news. The Disney Dish News is brought to you by Storybook Destinations, trusted travel partner of the Disney Dish podcast. For a worry-free travel experience every time, book online at storybookedestinations.com. Jim, big news just came out. Disney extends its park reservation system into 2022. And it just came out a few minutes ago. So this means that at least for the foreseeable future, we will all be required to tell Disney where we're coming and going. I think they're extending this out just as a safety measure. I'm not, just because they have it doesn't mean they're going to enforce it all year.
No, I agree. The news last week that Universal had shifted Jurassic World Dominion from a summer 2021 release date to a summer 2022 release date. I think at this point, you just have these immense corporations just sort of, all right, let's just be safe. Let's put some stuff in place just in case this vaccine thing. And remember, just in this past week, we've had 2 trials stopped. Just that this may not come as fast as we want, and let's start thinking long range here. So
the thing with the Johnson & Johnson trial stopping that hurts is that's a single shot vaccine, and everything else is 2 shots. So you kind of want those single shot vaccines to work. Jim, do you think this means that park hopping will not be available for the foreseeable future? This is, by the way, a question from Adam.
If you talk with folks who work retail or folks who work the food service side, the lack of park hopping is killing them. You know, it used to be you'd start your day at the Magic Kingdom, and then you'd head over to Epcot and catch a wonderful dinner, and then catch the nighttime show. And the fact that that's broken. I mean, the most popular parks, Magic Kingdom is still doing a good, strong business, retail and food. But Animal Kingdom and Epcot are still having some issues. I think, thanks to our buddy BioReconstruct, we're fairly up to speed about what's going on with Harmonious. But if you talk with the folks at Epcot, that show can't come fast enough. They need that to get the crowds in there, especially in the late afternoon and evening.
I think that'll help Epcot for a number of reasons. One, if you go back to what Bob Chapek said last week about the parks running at 25% of capacity, 25% of capacity for Epcot is pretty close to an average day, right? So their capacity is like 110, so their park capacity is like 28K. I mean, I think they only averaged low 30s. So Epcot could be the park that does the closest to normal business.
But again, you need that artificial, you have to stay here till 7 or 8 o'clock at night to make sure that people are going to those restaurants.
And you need a reason to do that, right? So number one, you need the reason. So you need Harmonious, and then I think that'll allow them to start opening up some restaurants. Do you think that they'll ever implement like a hybrid park hopping system where you could do same day park hopping if there's space?
If you talk with anybody on the park ops side at Disney, all they're talking about is the fact they've got the people from California, from Governor Newsom's office, that check out what's going on.
Did you see them? Did you see the photos of them walking? The folks from California walking through the Disney parks. God love them. I mean, number one, fantastic that they're actually going to Orlando to see how Disney is implementing safety procedures in the parks. But I think those people wearing suits coming from California, hitting the Florida humidity, like. I'm just saying, if I had to wear a suit in Florida, and last week it was in the 90s last week in humid, I would walk through that park saying nothing about this is good. I hate all of this, and we shouldn't do anything, right?
Yeah.
Is there something in California that requires them to wear polyester?
The message you're supposed to get visually is here. We are here for work. We are not here playing. We're not enjoying this.
So the concept of business casual hasn't yet hit California. I'm pretty sure they have gaps there too, Jim.
I know. I completely understand, but
yeah, so that is like, could these? It's like. It was like there would be the world's worst undercover policeman.
Oh no, absolutely. Boozing under the earpiece. But yeah, what I was basically told is like until California reopens, at this point we don't dare change anything because that the effect of California.
Yeah.
Oh, what about
then
that?
We're like, we have to reevaluate all this.
Yeah. So that's exactly. So they're locked for a while.
It is a good sign that that California sent people over, and I think they're going to be pleasantly surprised with what they saw. The other piece of news that came out is the Swan and Dolphin are switching from Disney transportation to Mears bus service. So the two things about this: one, it's got to be cost. Disney must have been charging the Swan and Dolphin higher than market rates, and so they're switching over to Mears. But the second thing is, from my perspective, the thing that's going to be interesting is whether the bus service changes considerably. So we've been timing Disney bus service for years, and we collect information from the app every few minutes on the bus routes and the transportation times across the Disney resorts. So once this switches to Mears, I'll be interested to see if the wait time for a bus goes up or down at the Swan or Dolphin.
That's kind of a bizarre decision.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be money, right?
How much money can they save? I mean, this means a different bus slot, a different drop-off point, because, it's only the actual really real Disney buses.
Oh, right. I didn't think about that. Right. Yeah. So they're going to be farther out at Epcot. Well, people are walking to Epcot, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like at the Magic Kingdom, I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one.
I think some accountant in a room far away from theme parks made that decision, and I'm going to be interested to see how long that stands.
Yeah, and it's not the we're all one big happy family. You're within Walt Disney World.
No. I mean, just think about it. You walk out one side of the hotel, you get the boats, and they take you to the studio. They take you to Epcot, and you walk out the front door, and it's a Mears bus where it's like, we're going to park in Mozambique and enjoy the schlep.
Enjoy your walk in on the asphalt, kids.
There we go.
Oh, Lord. Yeah. All right, Jim, I'm going to skip listener questions this week, and we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, Smithsonian Museum specialist Bethanee Bemis talks to us about Disney theme parks and the American experience. We'll be right back.
Optimism isn't sunshine and rainbows. It's fixing things, changing the way we fix things. It's running the world on smarter energy. Because if optimism never stops, then change can't either. GE Vernova, the energy of change.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
As I said last week, we're going to have someone on the show who knows what they're talking about for a change, and that's Bethanee Bemis, museum specialist at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. And she's written a paper entitled Our Cartoon City Upon a Hill, the Disney Theme Parks, the Public, the National Narrative, and American Identity. Welcome to the show, Bethanee.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
And I take it you're a fan of the Disney theme parks?
I would say, yes, that I am a fan. I've probably been not quite as many times as the two of you, but more than the average bear in the United States.
When was your first trip, and when was your most recent trip?
My first trip was when I was 2 or possibly younger. I don't have a great memory of that one. And my most recent one was January 2020, right before the shutdown. So I got a nice one in, yeah.
Right under the wire.
Yeah, really fantastic. All right, so you've been to the parks recently. All right, so let's begin. What do we mean by the American experience? What are we talking about here?
So what we're talking about is really a fictional narrative, a fictional way of looking at the United States. It's the story that we buy into as Americans that binds us together and gives us a united identity, right? So it's the stories that history may have debunked or debunked parts of, the first Thanksgiving and the way the wagon trains went out to the West and people standing up for others during the Civil Rights Movement, all of these little histories that we point to and say, these are the characteristics of an American. These are the characteristics that we all say we aspire to.
So it's the story we tell ourselves about who we are.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And what role did Disney theme parks play in this?
So Disneyland, Disney World, when they're first built, they really reflect sort of this 1950s aspect of the American narrative. It's very traditional, pretty white and male. But as things move and change in the United States, we also see Disney starting to change in their parks and in their films and other outputs. So really, the Disney parks are a reflection of who we are at any given time.
So you mentioned that when Disneyland opened, it reflected the narrative of the time. So this was 1955, sort of Cold War America, right? So we have those things. Why do you think people responded to Disneyland so positively when it opened? So, I mean, Walt built a theme park where other people had built amusement parks. But when you think about all of the different themes that could have happened, right? He went with specific ones. Why did those work?
Well, as you said, when in 1955, we're in Cold War America. And people are actually pretty concerned about America's future, right? Is there going to be an America in the future? Are we going to become communist in the future?
Remember when that was a thing? I'm much more concerned now with murder hornets than Khrushchev, but okay.
Well, it's always reassuring, right, to think that you can look back at a time in America, whether it was true or not, and say, well, they made it through that, so we're going to be okay. If the pioneers could cross the plains with nothing but, a covered wagon and 2 ox or whatever in the games that they play, we can get through these hard times. And so I think that that's one of the reasons both that we're seeing people going back to the parks today, even when some people are saying it's not really safe or may not be safe to travel. And it's why we saw people going in the 50s. It's a place not just to escape, right? I think that people lean on that, right? Oh, in Disney, everything's perfect and it's, everything's taken care of for you. It's a nice place to escape. But it's also a place of reassurance that these moments in our history have happened. We've made it through them. We're all going to be okay.
That's a great point. So there's actually a book called The Architecture of Reassurance. Have you read it?
Yes. That's a great book. I think it's Carol Ann Marley.
And you mentioned you specifically mentioned reassurance, which is what brought it back to me. So it's not only the architecture, but it's the stories that are told.
Absolutely.
Inside those buildings, right? Okay.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that as in your paper that as Disney and Disneyland grew in popularity, we start to see more interactions between the U.S. government and the Disney Corporation. And Jim, you've talked about, like, as one instance, Disney during World War II producing propaganda films for the government and also helped keep the studio afloat. But Bethany, what are some other examples of sort of the government recognizing the power that both Walt Disney and the Disney Corporation have to sort of shape this narrative?
I have sort of two favorite examples of this. The first one is in 1976, right? We're celebrating the bicentennial of the United States, and Disney stages America on Parade, which you may or may not have talked about right here. And it's recognized as an official bicentennial celebration by the U.S. government.
Is it really?
It is.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
So it's legit. They're legit.
Wow.
Holy cow. Anybody who's actually watched that parade, it's like, okay, what drugs did they slip to them?
It was the 70s. It was a different time.
I guess so.
Wow,
how about that?
Today, a giant Betsy Ross. Everyone loves that.
Giant televisions going by, giant pieces of junk food. I mean, it just...
Right. This is America.
Yeah.
Literally, that should have been. It should have been in the song.
Oh, God.
Man. But the great thing about those parades is that, or one of the things that this is a key turning point in my perspective in Disney being not just a place where you are entertained, but a place where you go to affirm your sort of patriotism. Because America on Parade, it was at both parks, right on both coasts. Disney estimated that around 25 million people were exposed to this parade.
Oh, so that's more than 1 in 10 people who lived in the United States at the time.
It's
right?
an incredibly high number, especially when you think that Independence National Historical Park, right, which is where the Declaration of Independence was signed, which is what we were celebrating in 1976, had 3.7 million visitors that year.
To be fair, the Disney parks have better rides.
I mean, it's true. You do still have to wait.
Exactly. Yeah.
In the early 1960s, as America began talking about its bicentennial, there was this, oh my God, we it's our 200th birthday. We have to do this amazing things. And then as the 60s give way to the 70s, we're suddenly dealing with Watergate. And then we have the recession that starts in 73. And a lot of the plans for the bicentennial got pushed off to the States, got smaller and smaller. And so Disney became one of the bigger celebrations because, again, they did this parade for almost 2 years. Is that right?
Yeah. 75 to 76, they did the parade. And it was, so incredibly popular. Again, people are still talking about it today. I've never seen it in person, right? But, I can certainly relate to it.
What was the? So that's a fantastic example. What was the other one that you had?
The other one is U.S. presidents visiting the Disney parks, right? So, pretty much everybody knows that Nixon goes in 73. I mean, that's a big moment. But every president since 1955, with the exception of Lyndon Johnson, has visited a Disney park at some point in their political lifetime.
Every president, really?
Every president. Some of them you do have to fudge a little bit. So I'm going to clarify that, and it is Disney property.
Okay.
So what we've had, I think, four sitting presidents inside the actual theme park.
Who are the four?
We'll start with Obama. He goes in 2012. We had...
Oh, he did the thing on Main Street.
He did.
He had a castle selfie, right? Like his...
Yes, he did.
Whom among us doesn't, right?
Yeah, but not with the street empty, all right, and with an entire castle.
I beg to differ, Jim. I have some from July. I mean, Barack's not special.
There we go. All right. My mistake.
All right. Did George W. Bush?
Yeah, George W. Bush goes to the Grand Floridian for a fundraiser, a Republican GOP
Close enough.
fundraiser.
There's a walkway. Close enough.
I mean, yeah, he could have hopped over. It's H.W. Bush is the one before Obama who goes. He's there. He's actually there twice as the sitting president. Once to celebrate his Points of Light program, which actually coincided with Walt Disney World's 20th birthday.
I remember that. Okay.
And once to tour. He's touring the Living Seas after he goes to an American Farm Bureau convention, and they're talking about sustainable farming practices and hydroponics, and I like to picture him on the living seas
in the hydrolators,
living with the land, just putting his sunglasses on and off like the rest of us.
So what do these politicians get in visiting a Disney theme park or working with Disney? What are they getting?
Well, so 83% of Americans roughly, right, have been to a Disney park, and pretty much brand recognition has got to be at 100%. Right, in the United States. So if you want to identify yourself with the average American, there's almost no better place to appear.
Right. I mean, baseball games.
Suits, like I heard you talking about that earlier, that does set them apart. But yeah, it's just like going to a baseball game and throwing out the pitch. Nixon, all the pictures of Nixon on rides when he's gone, they're all very popular. And they show a side of Nixon that people really want to still believe in.
And let's not forget, when it comes to Nixon, I mean, the famous "I am not a crook" speech, which was in front of the AP Reporters Convention that was held at the Contemporary. I mean, literally, he said that on Disney property. I mean, there's so much presidential history that courses through Disney. I mean, whether it's Ronald Reagan is one of the hosts of the Dateline Disneyland, the live television special back in '55, or for Reagan's inaugural parade that got basically frozen out because of the record cold temperatures. So what was it? A couple of months later, they restage it around Epcot Center, and Reagan himself comes and is there at some bulletproof reviewing stands that they set up.
Wait, right? Reagan's second inaugural parade was at Epcot?
They technically call it his inaugural bands parade. Because what they did was they invited all the bands who couldn't participate. So it's mostly high school bands. And they flew them down. I think they got almost every band to participate.
Yeah, Len, this was May 27th, 1985.
I mean, it could have been even better. So one of the things that I've done in pursuing this research is listen to the Nixon tapes from the White House, listening for Disney references.
God bless you.
Yeah.
Did you really?
I really did.
Ron Ziegler, his press secretary, did the Jungle Cruise plan. When he was a teenager, college student, he worked on the Jungle Cruise as a skipper.
Really?
And evidently, there's a story that Nixon went to Disneyland in the middle of his presidency and actually made Ziegler go up to the front of the Jungle Cruise. And it was Nixon and a couple members of the cabinet and a lot of Secret Service. And Ziegler did the spiel again.
No.
See, I haven't found a reference to that. I would love to hear that.
Yeah, same thing here.
All right, so Bethanee, when you listened to the Nixon tapes, did you find any Disney references?
Oh, there's tons of Disney references because Nixon loves Disneyland. He loves Disneyland.
Oh, he actually liked Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
See, here's the thing. Like right before Nixon died, there was sort of like this redemptive arc to his story, and people were like, okay, in retrospect, maybe he wasn't that bad, constitutional crises aside. But I think if people would have said, okay, he liked Haunted Mansion too, we could have all related. And I'm only like a slightly facetious here, right? But like, okay, Tricky Dick and I go on Big Thunder. We can work some things out.
Right, as long as we can agree on that.
What are some specific references?
So
what did you hear?
Well, he almost was at the opening of Walt Disney World, which I think is sort of common knowledge. He ended up not being able to go because he was about to make a big troop reduction announcement regarding Vietnam and didn't want to appear callous. But he did send a flag that had flown over the White House. He sent it down with Ziegler and with H.R. Haldeman, and they presented it to Roy on Main Street. And if anyone knows where that flag is today, I would love to know. I have not been able to track it down.
Is Haldeman still alive?
You know what? I think he might be. I should ask him.
I'm just saying.
Just cold email.
You're in Washington. Yeah, exactly. Hey, apropos of nothing.
But there's constant references to him. He's trying to figure out how he can go down to Florida and slip in a visit to Walt Disney World and make it look like official business. And he doesn't get to go until 73. And of course, he doesn't even get to go in the parks. It's not until the 80s that he gets to go back and tour Walt Disney World. And he actually says to the reporters there, he says, I've been all over the world, and you haven't seen the world until you've seen Walt Disney World.
Oh, that's a line right there.
I know they should use that line, right? They should.
Wow.
But I have a paper that's forthcoming specifically about presidents at Disneyland, and the title is taken right from the tapes, and it's Nixon, and he just says, I think the great thing would be to go to Disneyland.
I'm telling you, if those tapes would have come out, that would have helped his redemptive arc. Would have been like, okay, maybe he wasn't all that bad. I'm just saying.
I know. Well, my favorite observation by far is that he and some of his cabinet are talking about touring in Europe and going to these old castles and things like that. And they say, yeah, but you know what? There's never a bathroom when you need one in these castles. And that's what Disneyland did right. Everywhere you look at Disneyland, there's a bathroom.
It's true.
And I have to say, I agree.
It's true. Oh my God, this is fantastic. How'd you get access to the tapes?
Oh, anyone can access them. They're online.
Are they really?
You just have to have the wherewithal to be willing to sit and listen.
Oh. How many hours was it?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I spent a couple of weeks on and off doing it. The really great thing though is that the library has put together sort of a guide to them, so you can keyword search.
Oh, okay.
So I
All right.
keyword searched Disney, and then I went through and listened to every single time it was referenced.
So I want to walk through the parks with you, and sort of like land by land, and talk about the national narrative that's presented in each land, and maybe talk about how if there are key attractions in that land that sort of enforce that. But before I do that, real quick, Disney's got parks in other countries, right? France, Japan, China. Do those parks in those countries mimic or amplify their host countries' cultural narratives the same way that we do in the U.S.?
They actually they amplify the U.S. narrative.
Really?
Originally, so the info I got on this is from Marty Sklar's book, right? And he talks about when they're building Shanghai, and they wanted to be able to kind of scoop up some of the kids on field trips and things like that. They wanted to have an area that was, educational about Chinese history. And the people that they were working with in China said, no, we want America and Disney. That's what.
Yeah, we have China history all around us. We don't need that.
Oh, right. We already know that. We associate Disney with America. Even recently, there have been studies that have said, over 50% of people in the world, when you say Disney, associate it with America, even if they have one outside their park.
Conversely, though, when they opened Tokyo Disneyland in '83, they actually created an attraction there that was actually it was the Meet the World thing, Len, that was supposed to be put into the Japan pavilion. Yeah. But it first opened at Tokyo, and it turned out it was a bomb because the Japanese people, when they went to Tokyo Disneyland, they didn't want to learn about Japan. They were there to go to a Disney theme park. And it's just like, yeah, our history. Where's the line for Haunted Mansion?
Right. You could just have transplanted the exact footprint of Disneyland over there. Yeah, they would have been quite happy.
Yeah.
And in fact, they leaned into it. In France, we have the Wild Bill.
The Wild Bill Hickok dinner show thing.
Yes, which we don't even have that in the United States, right? So
that's a great show.
They really lean into that.
One of the funniest memories I have of Disneyland Paris is seeing French people at the French equivalent of the Frontierland Shooting Arcade. Like just this idea that people in tight pants and striped shirts picking up fake rifles to shoot at targets is like the last thing I would have expected to see in a quasi-American frontier town. Like the last thing I would have expected to see in Paris. But there it was.
I mean, when in Rome, put on an American accent.
The other thing too is, especially in Paris, the relative size and importance of Frontierland in that park, as opposed to, Fantasyland being the center of basically every other park, right?
Just a quick side note here, because when the Imagineers were working on that park, it was more a case of when Walt Disney built Frontierland back in '55 or thereabouts, it was influenced by David Crockett, influenced by Gunsmoke, whereas you look at the version of Frontierland that was done for Euro Disneyland, this was more influenced by the spaghetti westerns that were so popular. Yeah. So it was a bigger scale, wider vistas. You expected Clint Eastwood to come around a corner and shoot at you. These things always reflect the time in which they are designed and then the world they're launched into.
Exactly.
All right, let's do this, Bethanee. Let's go through the parks and the lands, and we'll talk about the national narrative that's in each of them. So, starting with the Magic Kingdom, the easy one, I guess, is Main Street USA.
Main Street USA is all about, it represents free enterprise, right? And small town living, which we all know that Walt thought it was disappearing. Did it really exist in the way that he had it in his mind? Possibly not. But it does now, right? Main Street USA is everywhere. And I live in Maryland. I live near Columbia, which was clearly informed by the way that Disney planned out Main Street and the rest of their park. So right when you walk in, you're sort of anchored in this stereotypical, the good old days, right? Maybe they really were.
So does Columbia have like white picket fences and manicured lawns?
Yeah, and it has a main street, and it has, it's laid out just like Disney. I mean, there's a whole field of study about Disney's influence on urban architecture.
Sure.
But that's one that I always think of since I live near.
I don't know if I told you this, but I live in Celebration, so I basically live that every day.
Sometimes I wish I lived there as well.
All right, let's move on to Adventureland. So what's the national narrative in Adventureland?
So Adventureland is really, it's the spirit of adventure, which always makes me think, right, of the statue at the American Adventure in Epcot. But it's also this sort of manifest destiny, right, that the United States will continue to explore and expand until it really can't anymore. If you want to be cynical, you could also say maybe there's a little bit of colonialism in there and sort of appropriating other places. But from a fun perspective.
But none of the settings in Adventureland are American, right? So Jungle Cruise we know of as basically every place other than North America.
Right. But Americans we were founded, or we like to say that we were founded on the notion of A, religious freedom, but B, on exploration, right? And finding out what else is in the world. So it sort of harkens back to, think about John Smith and singing when he lands in America and all the things that he's going to find and the dangers that he's going to encounter. And he's not going to miss one of them. Not one.
Got it.
It's so funny that folks who actually live in Virginia who have seen Pocahontas from 1995, it's like, yes, the majestic mountains of Virginia.
The very large waterfall into the ocean.
There we go. That's just around the corner from here. It's like,
There's some artistic license. Is that what you're saying?
Some huge artistic license.
Bethanee, is there anything in Enchanted Tiki Room that talks about the national narrative?
That's one that I haven't really thought about too much, other than
the way the Polynesian culture is sort of portrayed, right?
Sure. I think it's also, you could take it's the innovation of the audio animatronic technology, because that was sort of the whole park reflects that, right? The progress and innovation of the American spirit.
That makes sense. I mean, that was sort of the rationale for the attraction, right? Let's build a million little birds and show people.
The press releases from the opening of 63 stress the fact over and over again that, hey, we got the technology from the nuclear missile program, the guidance system for the missile.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so again, yes, that there is the American, not necessarily the happiest American narrative, but it is there.
I forgot about that. That's right. Because that technology had been recently, we talked about this when we did our Disneyland history.
Yeah.
That the technology used for the animatronics had recently become declassified.
Yeah. And so it's like, cool, we're going to use it to blow up Russia. We'll be over here with our tiny little singing birds. Okay.
Birds, yeah.
They took the best things they could find in America and were like, what's going to be more fun than a missile? I think tiki birds.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to begin?
Well, there's a lot of places one can begin in Pirates of the Caribbean. The national narrative part of the Pirates of the Caribbean, I think, is everyone kind of likes to look at America as the underdog. And though we don't want to think of ourselves as like bloodthirsty, I think we like to see ourselves a little bit like the pirates of the world, right? We flout the rules just a little bit to get the things that we need. And then, of course, in Disneyland, it's in New Orleans Square. So it's a sort of a direct reference to actual American history with John Lafitte and the giant anchor out front.
All right, I want to pause the conversation about the changing scenes in Pirates for later on in the show.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because that's a whole other thing. Let's bop over to Frontierland, Tom Sawyer Island.
Classic,
I guess. Classic. Yeah, that it's based on the books. Walt clearly loved Tom Sawyer Island. It's one of the handful of attractions in Walt Disney World that shows his direct influence. What are we saying there about the national narrative?
We're seeing this sort of dignity of the common man, I think, on Tom Sawyer Island.
Okay.
So that was one of the things that Walt always referenced sort of in most of his films. And then in his own life, he liked to emphasize sort of the dignity of the common man, right? Which, again, we can debate whether that is really how we function in the United States, but it's one of the ways that we like to see ourselves. Particularly the rural common man who has to work for a living, and then, he gets to go fishing in the afternoon, and that's like his fun time. I think that's who we really like to think of as making up the United States at that time.
If you really want a window into Walt Disney's take on the common man, small town living, that sort of thing, one of the very last films he worked on before he died is a film called Follow Me, Boys, where it's basically about a jazz musician who's passing through a town who gets kind of suckered into being the scoutmaster and stays. It's a very Frank Capra-esque film. But yeah, very, very much tying into that exact narrative. Walt's take on, if not the way things are, the way things should be.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of the, at our founding, Thomas Jefferson is like, this country's built on farmers, right? They're the ones that are going to push us forward. And that's what I think I see in Tom Sawyer Island. So, I mean, it's a little, it's not exactly an exact parallel, but that's a pretty good one.
I agree. This is definitely Disney sort of holding up sort of a rural common person narrative as the true America. But there's not a similar attraction anywhere in the Disney parks that sort of upholds city dwellers as equally American. Is there? Can we think of any? And here's why I bring up this point. So Paul Krugman makes this really interesting observation that if you look at, what, real, quote, real America is, we remember presidential campaigns of years past where red states were portrayed as, more, quote, more American or whatever. The vast majority of Americans, or most Americans, live in cities. Mm-hmm. So if you want to think about a typical American, it's somebody who lives in New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. Virtually no one lives on a farm anymore. So why is the farm the thing that we all sort of like agree to as typically American?
That goes back to Frederick Jackson Turner's thesis about the American frontier being what sets Americans apart from the rest of the world. His thesis is basically that having to conquer the frontier, having to go out and subdue the land, and also the people that lived on it, to live there and be self-sufficient is what made us into who we are.
Fair enough, but the people who did that are all dead, right? And we're more than 100 years past the closing of the American frontier. None of us has ever had to ride a covered wagon over the Rocky Mountains, or stop at Salt, or stop at Salt Lake City, right, and say, this is good enough, right? What?
I can't go another step.
It's really why I think Denver. That's why Denver was founded, right? People were like, "I'm good."
Yeah.
So why do we still have this? Why does this still have a hold on us? I mean, yes, most of it, or many of us, came from the people who settled the country. But if you put me in a covered wagon right now, my first question is, where's the Wi-Fi? Like, right. I would not adapt well. So why?
But do you like the idea of being able to survive? Would you like to have those skills?
So that's it. I do like the idea, and I love Tom Sawyer Island. It's one of my favorite places in the parks. But for me, it's something that I could never have done in a reality neither I nor my ancestors experienced. I like the myth.
Exactly. You like the myth. The myth ties you to, this is who we are. We can make it through. And if we have to, we don't want to.
Mm-hmm. But we could.
We could conquer the frontier if we had to.
Oh, maybe that's it.
It's also worth noting that if you look at a lot of the stuff that was developed for Epcot early on, you saw these idealized versions of cities in the future where, they had lots of green space and, they were eco-friendly.
I was going to talk about it with the TTA.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
yeah. So, I mean, there was an attempt in the mid-'70s to actually do it. The area was called Big City USA. But the idea was that, in Disney's eyes for the Imagineers, it's like, let's do the city experience only. We're going to move forward boldly 3 decades to 1920. The centerpiece of the entire land was, ironically enough, a recreation of the New Amsterdam Theater, which Disney, some 3 or 4 decades later, signs a 100-year lease on in New York. So,
yeah, there's no city. There's no attraction that glorifies city life.
Nope.
No, the only ones that I can think of are Spaceship Earth and American Adventure, where you get scenes of sort of great moments in city history, but not in the same way. I mean, they didn't build a whole land around it.
What else is there in Frontierland that jumps out at you as speaking to the narrative? I mean, Frontierland itself is basically the closing of the American West, right? So Big Thunder Mountain's in there, but what else?
Right. I mean, Frontierland of all the lands is sort of the one where everywhere you look, there's a symbol of the American West and then what that would have meant. They're not there anymore, obviously, but the wagon trains that used to run through Disneyland, where the mule trains, where you could actually sit on the mule and pretend that you had the skills to go out into the world and live in the frontier. And I think that's still what people are kind of experiencing when they go to the shooting ranges, and depending on where they're open in Frontierland as well. And when they go to, the Country Bear Jamboree and they hear these sort of folksy, slightly off-color songs, which is another way I think that Americans like to think of themselves, right? We're not totally proper all the time.
Right.
And they can pretend for a minute that they could have lived that kind of life.
Right. The songs in Country Bear Jamboree definitely harken back to a specific time and a place, right? Those are Southern or country and Western songs. And frankly, they're good. By the way, you mentioned this sort of off-color thing. I actually got a letter one time at the unofficial guide from a grandmother who complained about the scandalous nature of the line "Come up and see me sometime," as portrayed by Swingin' Teddy Barra.
And she didn't want to see that in her America.
No.
Exactly. It's like, but so like I wondered, like, when Mae West said that in the movies, like was she as a 20-year-old like, oh, what the hell's going on now? And this whole country's going to pot. Like the line. Yeah, the line is like it was at the time like 70 years old, right? I mean, she'd heard it before.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as a kid, it took me a really long time to understand it.
Yeah, it goes over most kids' heads, right? I mean, most kids will interpret it literally, right?
Right, she's in the scene. Yeah. Well, and that's the sort of sleight of hand as far as those kinds of little off-color moments that Disney's always able to pull off really, really well.
Right.
They go over many people's heads.
Yeah, and that's. I think that's the way that they design them. Let's move over to
one quick tangent here. We'll continue our parade of presidents in the park. If you Google Jimmy Carter, November 1978, you have Jimmy Carter jogging through Frontierland with Big Thunder in the background, with his security detail, by the way, because you just never know, when somebody, in the shooting gallery will turn one of those infrared guns around.
I'm thinking Jimmy's running through trying to figure out where he's going to build a Habitat for Humanity home on Tom Sawyer Island. He's like, look, next to the mill, it's got running water. We could put a duplex right there. That's Jimmy Carter.
That is a great place.
God bless him.
I love the idea because he's staying at the Disneyland Hotel because he's promoting his upcoming. He had finished his autobiography, I think, or one of his books, and he's promoting it. And I just love the idea that maybe he got up that morning and was like, I think we should go for a run, boys.
Go for a run, exactly. Boys, strap on your shoes. Yeah. Well, you think about it, like he's not going to go running around Harbor Boulevard, right?
No.
The safest place to be is in the park.
Disney. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
There's a lot of great presidential moments. You could do a whole podcast on just presidents in the park.
All right, Jim, podcast idea.
Okay.
All right, so Liberty Square. Moving on to Liberty Square. Obviously, the most American of the lands. Hall of Presidents. I don't think we need to say anything there, do we? Is there? I think it's sort of. We could talk about the story, how it's changed over time.
I mean, sure. Yeah, if you want to.
By the way, for your research, I have the original paper pitch when this was titled "One Nation Under God."
Oh, okay.
If you want to see it.
Yeah.
But that was the premise of it, right? So it was holding up the presidents. But what is it about the presidents that Disney wanted to use to shape the American narrative? Because let's face it, the presidents have exhibited a wide range of behavior.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a reason they started with Lincoln, right? Because he was everybody, including Walt's favorite, and he's sort of a neutral character, right, in terms of politics. I think that what appealed to Walt about the presidents was the way that an ordinary citizen, much like himself, could somehow end up on a track where they would lead an entire nation.
You're not born into royalty, in other words.
Right. And I think we see that in the, in this sort of pre-show area where they have their objects that they've borrowed from sort of presidential libraries and things like that. And I know, one of the things that's there are sort of the dog tags and cat tags from some of the first pets. And so it's really like, look at this guy. He's just like you. FDR loves his dog.
Yep.
But he's also
and that humanizes them. Okay. That's a great point. Is there anything else in Liberty Square that jumps at you? So we've got Haunted Mansion, and we've got the Liberty Bell Riverboat. Those are the only other two attractions in Liberty Square.
Yeah, I think in Liberty Square it's more the theming, right? Because we have the sort of Liberty Tree, we have the Liberty Bell, which is cast from the original mold that cast the original Liberty Bell. I mean, the attention to detail, to historical detail there is incredible. And the new thing that they have there, well, it's not new anymore, really, but the Muppets present Great Moments in American History.
Oh, yeah.
I can't tell whether that's a good awe or a bad awe. I don't know your feelings.
Oh, it's fantastic. I love it.
So my take on the Muppets is actually that this is one of the ways that they've sort of moved Liberty Square forward in two ways. One is it's sort of participatory, right? There's the town crier who comes out and you get to participate, and that makes people feel like they're in this story.
Oh, great. It's immersive.
It's immersive.
Okay, good point.
And that's one of the things that gives Disney its power, right? Is that you remember the version of history best that you connect to. And when you smell the smells and eat the turkey legs and feel like you're there, whether it's true or not, that's the memory that you have of that time. And that's why Disney has that so much power, right? Because they reach so many of us, but also because their memories have this sticking power. So I think the Muppets in particular have that sticking power. And also, I think it's a little subversive. It's a little Hamilton-like to have Muppets of different colors of fur and genders portraying different characters in American history.
That's a fantastic observation. I'd never thought of that. That's great.
Also hilarious, but I do think it is a little, it's a little subversive. It's kind of nice.
That is a wonderful, is that in your paper? That's a wonderful observation. Totally write that down now. All right, let's move on into to Fantasyland. By the way, just a time note, we're going to get through Magic Kingdom, and that's going to be about it for this show. We may have to have you back on.
Sure thing.
Let's do it. All right, so let's go through Fantasyland real quick. So Fantasyland, I think, at first glance, is the least obviously American land that we have. But are there elements of the American narrative in Fantasyland?
Yeah, I think there's two main things that I think of when I think of Fantasyland, right? And one is a sense of optimism. Okay. So it's very American, or we like to think that it's very American, to be able to see the rosy side of things. The other is that most of the sort of fantasies and stories that are portrayed in Fantasyland come from European myths and folklores that Americans brought here with them.
Okay.
So it's almost like incorporating that the immigrant aspect of the American melting pot, right? By taking all of our sort of backstory, fun stories and putting them in one place.
Oh, so Fantasyland is the melting pot of stories that we Americans picked up from here. That is great too. All right, so we've got Cinderella, right? Cinderella Castle, which is Cinderella. Jim, is Cinderella German?
Neuschwanstein.
Yeah.
German. Yeah. Okay. I knew the castle was. I wasn't sure what the story was.
I'm actually not. I think it might be French.
Well, yeah, they make a big deal at Euro Disneyland that Cinderella, she's theirs. Very big deal for Euro Disneyland, so that Pinocchio celebrates Italy, Toad Hall celebrates England. I mean, it's the Heinz 57, making sure that everybody gets, you're represented. Now come here, buy tickets.
Right.
Oh, I love the melting pot idea, though, and the stories too that come with it.
And then you're right, It's a Small World. If you just want a one-hit wonder, you just go through It's a Small World.
Oh, that's perfect. It's sort of Small World is sort of summing up the both those aspects of Fantasyland. That's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The fascinating thing about Small World is that when it debuted at 64 World's Fair, the country that was least represented, oddly enough, was the United States. And that with each iteration of it, it's like, oh, yeah, the version that was done for Euro Disneyland is this 1980s take on the United States that you actually, and in fact, as you're exiting the section, you go through the Hollywood Bowl. That's sort of, only Imagineers who live in Southern California. It's like, well, yeah, it's got Indians, it's got cowboys, and the Hollywood Bowl. Yeah, there's America.
Hashtag America. Right.
There we go.
I think, too, some of the Fantasyland stories, if you think about like Peter Pan or you think about Winnie the Pooh or, even Snow White, they're basically the underdogs in their story. Going back to the thing that you said, Bethanee, about what we like about pirates.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why those are the stories that resonate, that stay in our history, and why Walt chose to cartoonize them. All
right, so let's move on to Tomorrowland. I think Tomorrowland is one of the more obviously American lands in the park. But what do you see, Bethanee, when you go into Tomorrowland? What do you notice?
I mean, when I think about Tomorrowland, I actually, the song from American Adventure pops into my head, and the New Frontiers sort of chorus, right, is like rising really, really strong. And that's exactly what I think of. And in fact, there's a paper out there that credits Walt Disney, both in Disneyland and then in his TV specials, talking about space travel with making it acceptable to Americans to think that we really could actually go to space.
Oh, this was the Jim. This was the thing you did with Werner von Braun.
Yeah,
the
cartoon.
Yes.
The Man in Space film that was done in '56 or thereabouts. Yeah, I mean, it airs on a Tuesday, and on Wednesday, Eisenhower has somebody call Disney Studios and request to print the show to the Pentagon. So, hugely impactful film.
Yeah, and I think again, these attractions are not there anymore, but you could, ride the Mission to the moon, as Nixon did, and we still have his certificate that he made a lunar flight. That's at his presidential library.
I mean, mine's framed too. Doesn't everyone keep these? I mean, it's literally next to my diploma.
And the Monsanto House. So it's both future, it's new frontiers, not simply physically, but also technologically, right? So the TTA, which is, in my opinion, the best ride in the park, we can debate that for a long time. But, that gives you both this sort of new vistas, but also new technology, whether you want your hair done by a robot or not.
And actually, to Jim's point earlier, it talks about there's a piece of the original plan for Epcot there.
Progress Land,
yeah.
Yeah, the model, yeah. But Epcot, the city, in fact, I think the whole Disney-related narratives, to face it, Walt, when we lost him in 66, was building toward this moment where he was going to shift from entertainer to urban planner. And there's a lot of urban planning that went into Walt Disney World, but we never actually got that city. And, if you think about what we were as a nation in the 1960s, the notion of we're going to the moon, and then what? It's like, we'll think of something. But at the same time, I mean, I love your take on the Disney parks and the history of the company, and I really look forward to reading this paper.
So I want to talk a little bit. I ended on Tomorrowland for a reason, and it's because I want to talk about Carousel of Progress. So Bethanee, you wrote in one of your papers that the way that each new generation of Disney park fans helps shape what's seen in the parks is by how they respond to certain attractions, right? So you say, and I'll quote you here on this, the national narrative is not static. It's molded in the shape of each new generation's own definition of the American identity, occasionally through conflict of varying forms. And one of the ways that we know that the Disney parks are true locations of national memory is in the fact the ways the public debates over the park's content, right? And Disney parks have responded to those debates, remaining relevant as icons of America for over 60 years, precisely because they allow the narrative they present to change alongside the identity of the American people. All right, so I want to go over some examples of how Disney has changed things in its parks and that process of reevaluation, not only for Disney parks, but something that you do at the Smithsonian, right? Mm-hmm. So let's start with changes to Carousel of Progress over the years.
Mm-hmm. So Carousel of Progress, besides the fact that it's like one of the most long-standing stage shows and most seen stage shows in the United States, has also undergone probably one of the highest number of changes of the long-standing attractions in the parks. It changes in the 60s, it changes in the 70s, it changes in the 90s. Mm-hmm. I suspect it will change again. And again, Marty Sklar actually made reference to specifically the Carousel of Progress as a place where the parks could represent the changing roles of women and grandparents and families in the United States. And so there's Lynn Weiner has written an entire paper just about the script of the Carousel of Progress and how it changed to reflect sort of the women's liberation movement. And there's this sort of great moment where Mother is trying to paint her rumpus room, right? And she's
wallpapering it, right? Yeah.
Automatic paint stir. And we went through a time where she had created the paint stir. And she was sort of given credit for it.
So that was one version of the script?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. One version of the script is sort of, she's given credit for being intelligent in her own right. Right. And creating this machine that she has. What we have now, for those who still ride the Carousel of Progress, of which I am definitely one of them, is of course that her husband is credited with creating the automatic paint stirrer. It backfires and she shoots back at him basically, your machine is useless. It would be more helpful if you would get up and help me, right? Which you couldn't imagine a wife saying to her husband in the 60s, probably into the 70s as well. Right. So just the little ways that they've changed the interactions of the characters really change the way that we perceive the roles of the people in the show.
So that's interesting because in the 70s version of the script, you're right. She's got more agency, right? She takes her food stand mixer and turns it into a wallpaper or paint mixer. But then Disney regressed it. They changed the script in 95.
Yeah, and again, I can't take credit for this. So Lynn Weiner ascribes that to In the 90s, there is this sort of conservative pushback
post-Reagan era,
on the women's liberation movement, right? As in most things, it's a pendulum swing, and then it sort of swings back in the other way. And so she would say that very subtly, Disney is reflecting the way that we are talking about women each time they update this. Whether they intended to or not, they are being influenced by the culture outside of the writer's room.
No doubt. I think the script of the 70s shows that. By the way, you and I had an offline conversation about whether Lynn Weiner read the script to Carousel of Progress or listened to it, right? Because if you listen to what Mother's saying in that scene, she's being sarcastic when she calls John a genius. But I think in reading, and I went back and I read Lynn Weiner's paper last night, she, I think, interprets that sentence literally, that she calls John a genius.
Yes, and so she actually reads it as even more sort of regression into conservatism,
right?
Or you changing into conservatism. Whereas I think I pulled that up and I played it for someone at the museum to say, am I interpreting this wrong? I mean, she clearly says, yes, John, you're a genius.
It's sarcasm, though. Yeah, and that's one of the things that there's no. But if you just read the script, there's no show note that says she's being sarcastic there. So if you read it literally.
Right. And you have to take it from her voice because you can't even see her. Right.
It's also worth noting here that, for the first version of Carousel of Progress, or the first couple of iterations, you had Rex Allen as the voice, whereas for the 95 version, this is now Gene Shepard, who is known for his comic stories and that sort of thing. And the slant is, the show was deliberately rewritten to sort of filter through. By this point, we A Christmas Story has started to get out into the lexicon. And so people are familiar with Gene Shepard and the way he performs. And so the script was kind of skewed in that direction. So I get the point she's trying to make, but we also need to remember the influence of who the voice was, and that his comic take on material. And if you know Gene Shepard, the mom is always brighter than the dad. That's one of the conceits of the Gene Shepard literary world.
Yeah, I think definitely in that scene that's what I get out of it. That Sarah's smarter than John here, but she's not being allowed to show it. That's what I get out of it.
I get that too.
The other thing I noticed when I reread Lynn's paper yesterday, Bethanee, was, and this is why I think Lynn read the script. You remember in scene 1 of Carousel of Progress when they talk about Mother being able to do the wash in only 5 hours, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So in that scene, there's an unnamed daughter next to her that doesn't show up anywhere else in the rest of the script. Like literally. So if you want to talk about like women's labor not being noticed, here's an entire human being who doesn't get a name and who doesn't appear in the rest of the show. And that wouldn't be picked up if you just read the script because she has no lines. But if you watch the show, you'd be like, hey, where'd this person go?
They're still out there doing the wash. I mean, it does take all day.
There we go.
All right, fair enough. We could go on about Carousel of Progress. I know there are other attractions we want to talk about, but let me just sort of loop this back to your day job. So Disney goes through, every 20 years when it updates Carousel of Progress, it sort of has to figure out how to present this narrative in a culturally relevant way to today's sort of consumers. How do you do the same thing at the Smithsonian?
So I work in the division of political history, which, as we know, is constantly changing.
Is it really? I figure sort of like static, sort of like sort of a gray background that's just never. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, when you come up and see our exhibit, you'll see it's very colorful.
Okay.
But to your point, basically every 4 years we have to go out into the public, see how people are reacting to candidates, how they are campaigning, and look for ways to update, one of our flagship exhibits, which is A Glorious Burden, the American Presidency.
That's really what's called, the Glorious Burden of the American President. Who called it a glorious burden?
I want to say Wilson, but I'm not 100% sure. I am sure that we have it quoted, however.
It's literally the only Wilson quote I would ever know then, but it's a good phrase. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's either he either said that or he said being president is like riding a tiger. There's some really great.
I know he said that. Okay, so I actually do know a Wilson quote. Look at that.
Roosevelt. And I'll have to look that up for you.
All right. So you got to go out. So you've got this exhibit, right? What's the specific exhibit we're talking about here?
Well, so right now, I mean, I sort of have my hand in three exhibits. We have the American Presidency, A Glorious Burden,
Okay.
Which explores, obviously, not necessarily so much the individuals as the role that the president plays.
Okay. And is this an ongoing exhibit or is it a special exhibit?
It's this has been there for as long as probably I've been alive. And,
okay. All right. Fair enough. So okay. So periodically you got to go through and you got to say, okay, what does the presidency mean to us now? Right.
Does the president still play this role? Has this become sort of a historical moment? I mean, there's simply the fact that you have to update. You know, we have a timeline of the presidents that we have to update every 4 to 8 years. Mm-hmm. That's a pretty basic one, right?
Right.
But also there's always new scholarship. And I'm sure that, Disney deals with this as well, particularly with the Hall of Presidents. The way that we understand the presidents is constantly changing. New information comes out about an individual, or we think of a new lens through which they affect our country.
Right.
And now both we and Disney have to think, how do we represent this?
Do you guys ever talk about how the view of the presidency by the presidents themselves has changed? And I'll give you an example. So back when Jefferson was contemplating the Louisiana Purchase, one of the things that he had to think about was whether he was even allowed to do that by the Constitution. Whereas I think virtually every modern president certainly thinks that the scope of the office would allow them to do that, A. But if you think about things like the way that the presidency can, and I'm just giving an example here, wage war without a declaration of war from Congress, right? Mm-hmm. No modern president would have thought that they would have been constrained by the office in the same way that Jefferson thought he was constrained by the office. Is that something you guys have to work through? Yeah,
well, I think a lot of it is about sort of showing the way that that people like Jefferson set that precedent, right? Because he finally decided this is too good of a deal to pass up.
Yeah, we'll justify it later constitutionally. By the way, I think that he has in common with every subsequent president, but go ahead.
People are able to look back and say, well, he established the precedent for this, just like the Supreme Court says, the Constitution established the precedent for this. So each president in that way gets to affect how future presidents think about the presidency. In the same way that each president sort of going to the Disney park and making a different kind of visit affected the way that the public thought about the president and Disney parks, or the president's role at the Disney parks.
Cool. So, and you guys do this update every 4 to 8 years?
I mean, yeah. Every time there's a new president, we sort of have to look at that. We also have we keep the First Lady's exhibit, which is one of our most popular exhibits. And of course, when we get a new First Lady, the gown that she wears to the inaugural ball, then generally it is up to her. Comes to us and we update our exhibit.
Really? I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. How about that? All right. Real quick, going back to Disney, and then we'll wrap this up. Besides Carousel of Progress, is there any other attraction that you think has been reevaluated more than others in the Disney parks over time? And it doesn't have to be a park. It could be a practice too, right? So you and I mentioned this sort of offline, but like alcohol in the parks was not a thing, but now it is.
Right. I mean, that's a huge one. Actually, it's Carter.
Is it Billy? Is it Billy? Please tell me it's Billy.
And say, well, I don't think it was Billy Beer, but it was when Carter went to open the international, it's the International Commerce, something, which is why he's there for the 20th anniversary. It also happens to be Carter's birthday. It's his 54th birthday, Walt Disney World's 5th birthday. And the International Chamber of Commerce is having their annual meeting there, which is the first time.
That's actually a huge event because this is when they roll out, Len, the first iteration of the plan for Epcot. I mean, this is a very big
for President Carter.
Yeah, this is a very big deal. This is the early Epcot. I mean, the Future World Theme Center version when it's horrible. But yeah, Carter is there for this big rollout.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yep. That's fantastic.
They take him through the Contemporary, which most of the presidents who come to Walt Disney World end up at the Contemporary. It's clearly like the president's hotel. But they take him through the Contemporary and they show him the Epcot model. And then he goes and he opens the International Chamber of Commerce meeting.
That totally
This was the first time that they had met outside of the capital city of a country. They chose
Disney
Walt
World.
Disney.
I mean,
Which I think you could argue is sort of the like colloquial capital.
you could argue that it's one of the cultural capitals of the United States, along with New York, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah,
Absolutely. But I guess the point that brought me to that was that they serve champagne at the opening. And I think that that's one of the first times that alcohol was allowed on Disney property.
Wow, that's fantastic.
But that's a huge one. I mean, now you can pretty much purchase alcohol in every park.
Right.
But smoking is another one that's sort of, you used to be able to smoke everywhere in the parks.
Yeah.
And now you can't smoke anywhere in the parks. Based on, I mean, where it's much more socially acceptable to drink in public than it is to smoke in public in the United States.
And that's changed over the last 40 years. That's amazing.
And the amount of time that the Walt Disney Company has dedicated since to going into photos of Walt and like the old Politburo over, Stalin, the group of people that are on Stalin would change. It's amazing to watch a number of photographs where, cigarettes have magically disappeared out of Walt's hands. So, and sometimes the same level of skill when it came to removing Stalin's lieutenants. It's like, what's going on with Walt's fingers? Never mind. Look at the picture. He's there open in that direction.
All right. We're I think at the limit for this particular episode, but it was fantastic. Thank you to our special guest, Bethanee Bemis, museum specialist at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C. Real quick, Bethanee, what are you working on now?
I actually have a project, an oral history initiative tracking how the COVID closure of the Disney parks and then the reopening of Disney parks has affected people's relationship with the parks. So as a guest or as a cast member or anything in between, I am interested in hearing your experience. And if you would like to share, you can write to me. Actually, the email address is COVID19 at si.edu.
All right, we'll post that in the show notes as well. Fantastic. All right, that's going to do it for our show today, folks. Please head on over to disneydish.bandcamp.com, where you'll find exclusive shows never before heard on iTunes, including new in-park audio and that special series on the Disneyland Circus. You could find more of Jim at jimhillmedia.com and more of me, Len, at touringplans.com. On next week's regular show, Jim gives us the history of the Wonders of Life Pavilion. We're produced fabulously by Aaron Adams, who'll be defending his World Axe Throwing Championship at the Baltimore Wing and Chicken Festival, Saturday, November 21st at Power Plant Live in beautiful downtown Baltimore, Maryland. And Aaron reminds you that even though he's throwing an axe in the middle of a pandemic, it's still safety first, so wear a mask. While Aaron's doing that, please go into iTunes and rate our show and tell us what you'd like to hear next. For Jim, this is Len. We will see you on the next show.